If you think that being disciplined, strong, or successful protects you from emotional harm, think again. Good men aren't destroyed by weakness. They're destroyed by loyalty, by giving chance after chance to someone who refuses to take responsibility for her own actions, by trying to save a woman who doesn't want to be saved. And it doesn't hit all at once. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. A subtle disrespect here, a small withdrawal there, a passing disregard that seems harmless at first. But over time, it begins to erode you. If lately you felt exhausted, unfocused, or strangely disconnected from who you are, pay attention. What I'm about to reveal are the 10 ways women destroy good men, and why most men don't see the danger until it's already inside them, reshaping their emotions, their self-worth, and even their identity. I've watched it happen countless times. Men dismantled piece by piece, never realizing the storm brewing until it's too late. I'm sharing this not to blame anyone, but because understanding these patterns is the only way to defend yourself. Women don't break good men in a single moment. They do it through repeated behaviors, expectations, and emotional patterns that most men never question. But the moment you recognize these patterns, your perspective changes entirely. Before we go further, take a moment to like and subscribe to Hidden Waters. Let me guide you with the clarity most men never get, because this knowledge can be transformative. Let's start with the first silent destroyer: unrealistic expectations. Good men rarely fail because they're weak. They fail because they exhaust themselves trying to meet standards that were never human to begin with. Listen carefully. Many of today's expectations aren't coming from a real woman sitting across from you. They come from social conditioning, media fantasies, and ideals she's been told to chase. Society asks a man to be emotionally available like a therapist, financially capable like a CEO, physically impressive like an athlete, and endlessly attentive like he has no life of his own. That's not love, that's performance. And when she begins treating you like a checklist instead of a human being, something inside you starts to crack. You stretch yourself thinner, you push harder, you give more thinking it will be enough, but it never is, because the target wasn't real. Women who chase perfection don't want a partner, they want a projection. And a projection cannot reciprocate love. The real danger here is that you don't see yourself eroding. You convince yourself that if you improve just a little more, if you work harder or give more attention, she'll finally be satisfied. And in the process, you lose pieces of yourself trying to fit an impossible ideal. Men don't break when they fail. They break when they abandon themselves to meet expectations that are never theirs to fulfill. When love becomes conditional on impossible perfection, it stops being sustainable. Next is overdependence. There's a difference between a woman who chooses you because she wants you and a woman who leans on you because she can't stand on her own. Most good men don't notice the difference until they're already buried under the weight of someone else's life. When a woman uses you as her emotional crutch, financial safety net, and constant source of validation, she's not building a partnership. She's attaching herself to stability she cannot generate herself. At first, you might interpret this as intimacy. You feel needed, important. But beneath that, something far more draining is taking place. You become her foundation, her stability, her lifeline. Meanwhile, she offers nothing equivalent in return. Dependency slowly consumes you. Every conversation becomes a crisis. Every disagreement escalates to collapse. Every responsibility falls on your shoulders. You're no longer a partner, you're a lifeline. And lifelines are expected to endure indefinitely. They don't get support, they don't get rest, and there's no reciprocation. They're just used until they break. The most damaging part is that you try to fix it. You try to solve problems that were never yours to solve. No matter how much effort you invest, the emptiness in her life never diminishes. It grows, and it drags you down with it. A woman who cannot stand on her own will eventually pull you down, not out of malice, but simply because she cannot rise. The harder you try to lift her, the deeper you sink. This is how good men burn out, not from lack of love, but from becoming responsible for a life that was never theirs to carry. The third way women destroy good men is through a lack of appreciation. A good man doesn't need fanfare or praise. He doesn't need parades or constant affirmation. But he does need acknowledgement. When a woman starts treating his effort as background noise, something inside quietly dies. Men express love through action. They show up, they solve problems, they protect, provide, and support in ways that may not be flashy but are consistent. Yet consistency carries a hidden risk. When your dedication becomes assumed, it stops being recognized. The small things, the little efforts that sustain a relationship, start going unnoticed. When she stops valuing what you do, when acknowledgement disappears, you fade from your own relationship. You become invisible. And once invisibility sets in, it quietly erodes your drive, your energy, and even your sense of self. This is just the beginning of understanding how subtle, seemingly small behaviors can dismantle a good man. These patterns, unrealistic expectations, overdependence, lack of appreciation, are repeated quietly but relentlessly. Each one chips away at your confidence, your energy, and your identity. Recognizing them early is the only way to protect yourself. Once you see them for what they are, you can reclaim your boundaries, your self-respect, and your emotional stability. Hidden Waters exists to give men that insight, the clarity most never get, because knowledge is the first step to survival. And now, let's dive deeper into what quietly dismantles a good man when it's happening right under his nose. This isn't just about not hearing a simple thank you, it's far more insidious than that. It's about the slow, almost invisible erosion that occurs when every effort you make is minimized, dismissed, or simply taken for granted. Over time, the effect accumulates. You begin questioning your worth, wondering whether you are loved or merely convenient, whether your presence matters, or if it's just another element she expects without acknowledging. You start asking yourself why you keep giving when nothing seems to come back. And here's the painful truth. Most men don't see it until it's already embedded deep inside them. A woman who cannot appreciate consistency will always chase chaos. She won't recognize stability because she has never been taught to value it. Instead, she focuses on flaws over effort, mistakes over intentions. You're not asking for worship. You're asking to be seen. And when that disappears, your love, your pride, and your sense of purpose begin to disappear with it. Men don't leave because they stopped caring. They leave because they've spent too long caring alone. Then comes one of the most corrosive elements of a relationship: communication breakdown. Men aren't destroyed by what they know. They're destroyed by what they're never told. One of the fastest ways a good man begins to feel worn down is when a woman expects him to read her mind rather than simply use her words. You've been there. She pulls away without explanation. She becomes upset but refuses to say why. She wants something but won't voice it. And somehow, magically, you are supposed to understand, solve the problem, and apologize for a mistake you never knew existed. This is not love. It's emotional sabotage disguised as, you should understand me. Women who avoid direct communication don't do it because it's mysterious. They do it because keeping you in the dark gives them leverage. When you're confused, you try harder. When you're unsure, you overcompensate. And the more you chase clarity, the more she withholds it. Slowly, you stop feeling capable, grounded, or secure. Every step becomes guesswork. Every word carries the weight of a potential misstep. Each day feels like taking a test where the questions were never handed to you. Men don't crumble under pressure. They crumble under uncertainty. And a relationship built on unspoken rules becomes a battlefield where you're always expected to bear the blame. The cruelest part is how easily you begin believing it's your fault, that if you were more intuitive, more sensitive, more understanding, you would somehow know, but you're not failing. You're functioning inside a system designed to make you fail. No man can carry confusion forever. Next is manipulative behavior, a subtle, almost invisible type of sabotage. Some women won't confront directly, won't openly state their desires, and won't claim their feelings. Instead, they twist the emotional environment until you feel guilty just for existing. The worst part? Good men fall for it every single time because they assume the fault must lie with them. Manipulation rarely screams, often it whispers. It arrives in guilt-laden remarks like, if you really cared, you'd know. Or in subtle rewrites of reality, I never said that. You're imagining things. It manifests when she plays the victim after creating a problem, turning every confrontation into a performance where she emerges innocent and you walk away ashamed. This isn't about seeking truth. It's about control. And the most effective way to control a good man is to make him doubt his own perception. You begin apologizing for things you never did, suppressing your needs because hers always feel more urgent, shrinking your voice because challenging her becomes dangerous. Bit by bit, confidence erodes, not because you're wrong, but because you've been conditioned to question yourself. You start tiptoeing around emotions, censoring thoughts, adjusting behavior, not to avoid conflict, but to avoid being blamed for things you never caused. Manipulation is most effective against empathy. That's why it destroys good men first. When truth is rewritten to protect ego, your identity is dismantled. Stay too long, and it's not just arguments you lose. You lose your ability to trust yourself. And then there's the subtle, yet devastating withdrawal of physical intimacy. For a man, physical closeness is more than a moment. It's a language. It tells him he is desired, valued, and connected. It reassures him that the bond between you is alive, tangible, and real. So when a woman begins to withdraw that intimacy without explanation, it cuts far deeper than most realize. She may say she's tired, not in the mood, or dealing with something else. And yes, occasional distance is natural, but patterns reveal the truth. You notice the first pullback, and it stings. You notice the next, and it hurts more, until finally you realize she only reaches out when she wants something from you. What you're experiencing isn't just a lack of intimacy, it's a lack of desire. And that is what quietly breaks good men inside. Men translate physical closeness into emotional closeness. When she stops seeking connection, stops leaning in, stops recognizing you beyond the roles you fulfill, a quiet emptiness begins forming. At first, self-doubt creeps in. You ask yourself, am I doing something wrong? Did I stop being attractive to her? Is it me? The answer is simpler, yet far more painful. It's not about you. She's disconnected, and her withdrawal chips away at the very sense of belonging, worth, and love that you've built into the relationship. And when you try to fill that void, to rekindle a connection that's no longer mutual, you feel the erosion even more deeply, because love cannot survive on one side alone. The problem isn't just that physical intimacy fades, it's what it represents. When closeness turns into a bargaining chip, a tool that can be given or withheld depending on her mood, her frustration, or her desire for leverage, it does far more than starve your body. It starves your spirit. It makes you feel undesirable in the one place where you should feel most accepted, most safe, most loved. A relationship cannot thrive when a man is treated like an accessory, something to be touched only when convenient. It's not simply the absence of physical connection that wounds, it's the painful realization that your presence no longer sparks hers, that the bond you nurtured is no longer alive in action, only in theory. Then comes the insidious weight of constant criticism. A man can endure stress, pressure, conflict, responsibility, and even failure. But what he cannot endure is a relationship where he is perpetually made to feel inadequate. Constant criticism is a quiet, deliberate erosion of a man's sense of worth. It rarely begins with shouting or overt hostility. It begins with little remarks, small jabs, subtle reminders that somehow nothing you do is ever enough. You never do it right. Why can't you just be more like... Little comments that may seem inconsequential at first slowly pile up, like drops of water hollowing out stone, until they become a daily affirmation that nothing you do matters. A woman who constantly criticizes isn't seeking to help you improve. She's shaping you to fit her script, to mold you into a version of yourself that satisfies her vision, rather than respecting who you are. And the more you bend, adjust, and contort to meet her demands, the more flaws she discovers. Criticism in this context isn't about growth, it's about control. Good men take criticism personally. They internalize it. They work harder, hoping to fix the problem, only to find that the problem was never theirs. The tragedy is that over time, Constant criticism rewires a man's mind. He stops expressing opinions. He stops initiating. He stops taking risks. Eventually, he stops being himself altogether because the quiet, compliant version of him feels safest, the version that won't be attacked. And that's how good men disappear, not physically, but emotionally. Not because they've lost care or passion, but because they've been gradually convinced that their very presence causes harm rather than good. Men don't shut down from weakness. They shut down from exhaustion, born of relentless judgment. Equally damaging is a partner who fails to support your ambitions. Every man carries a vision, a dream he builds quietly, often unseen, piece by piece. And the woman he chooses should be the person standing beside him as he brings that vision to life. But when she dismisses your goals, mocks your aspirations, or treats your ambitions as inconvenient or unrealistic, something inside you begins to falter. At first, you may shrug it off, telling yourself it's just a passing comment, that she didn't mean it. But you feel the sting nonetheless. Over time, her lack of support seeps in, casting doubt over your own voice and diminishing your excitement. A woman who cannot believe in your dreams will slowly teach you not to believe in them yourself. You begin scaling back plans to avoid conflict, silencing your excitement because it invites critique instead of encouragement, shrinking your ambition not for yourself, but because it benefits her when you remain average. Lack of support is a subtle form of emotional isolation. It tells you, without words, that you are on your own. And no man can thrive when the person he loves most is also the person who doubts him most. A partner who cannot stand with you does not deserve access to your future, and a woman who won't rise beside you will eventually block your ascent. Jealousy and insecurity can be just as destructive, though they often begin quietly, almost innocently. A woman's insecurity doesn't remain hidden, it spreads. It creeps into every corner of your life, gaining momentum until it subtly controls your choices and constrains your freedom. At first, it seems manageable. Questions about who you're texting, where you're going, or repeated requests for reassurance might seem like expressions of care. But insecurity rarely stays small. It escalates into suspicion, surveillance, and a suffocating need for control disguised as love. Suddenly, your phone becomes a source of tension, friendships become threats, independence becomes a problem, and the weight of calming fears you didn't create falls squarely on your shoulders. Here's the truth. Insecurity is self-focused. It's not about you. It's about her fears. Fear of losing control, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. And instead of facing those fears internally, she projects them externally, using your life as the arena to manage her discomfort. The tragedy is that good men tolerate this far too long, often mistaking it for emotional depth or care. They think, she must care about me, when in reality she cares only about protecting herself. Over time, insecurity transforms into a prison. Every move you make is scrutinized. Every relationship is examined. Every moment of independence feels like a violation. The emotional freedom you once had slowly evaporates, and a man who once moved confidently through life finds himself constrained, walking on eggshells, and questioning his own judgment at every turn. This is the point where love feels suffocating instead of sustaining, where care becomes burden, and where good men begin to fracture, not from lack of affection, not from a lack of effort, but from a slow, methodical erosion of their sense of self. And what makes it so dangerous is how invisible it all seems until you've already lost pieces of yourself. Every boundary you set is met with resistance, as if asserting your needs is an act of betrayal. And over time, without even realizing it, you begin to soften your edges, to compromise your values, to silence parts of yourself just to keep the peace. One compromise leads to another, and before you know it, a man loses his identity, not because he lacks strength, but because he's exhausted from fighting battles that were never his to fight. Love should never demand walking on eggshells. Control does. And living under control, subtle or overt, slowly teaches a man that his own presence must be muted to survive. Then comes the quiet cruelty of comparison, one of the most damaging forces in any relationship. There's no shouting, no insults, no direct attacks, just the implication, or sometimes the outright statement, that someone else is better. No matter how confident a man is, comparison cuts deeper than almost any other tactic. It often starts subtly, almost innocently. She casually mentions how her ex used to do something better, how a coworker is more ambitious, how another man is more attentive, more affectionate, more driven. Comments dropped lightly as if they don't matter, but for a man who loves her, they land like punches he cannot dodge. Comparison does not inspire growth. It forces a man to shrink. It makes him question his strengths and chase standards that were never his to meet. A woman who constantly compares isn't seeking improvement. She's seeking validation for herself, asserting control, and shaping you into a version that elevates her, not you. The more you try to compete with ghosts, the more you lose yourself. You stop living as the man you are and start living as the man she wants you to become. Over time, comparison rewires your identity. You second-guess your judgment. You hesitate to take pride in achievements. Every flaw feels amplified because you've been trained to view yourself through a lens of inadequacy. But here's the reality. A woman who truly values you does not weaponize other men to make you doubt yourself. She protects your confidence, she nurtures your growth, and she allows you the space to become your best self. Comparison doesn't create better men, it creates broken ones. And the moment you start believing someone else is inherently better than you, you've already begun abandoning yourself. A good man doesn't crumble in a single instant. He doesn't break because of one argument, one mistake, or one person. He breaks slowly, silently, as a series of small wounds accumulate, wounds he was too loyal or too trusting to acknowledge. One dismissed effort, one unfair comparison, one withheld word of affection, one small instance where he told himself, "It's not a big deal." But it is a big deal. Every time you tolerate behavior that drains you, you teach yourself to accept less than you deserve. And over time, that tolerance becomes a habit. That habit becomes a pattern. That pattern reshapes you into someone unrecognizable. The man who once led, now doubting himself. The man who once stood tall, now walking on eggshells. The man who once had clear direction, now trapped in emotional survival mode. You were never meant to live like that. If you recognize yourself in any of these patterns, understand this: nothing changes until you do. A woman will only treat you with the level of respect you enforce. Your boundaries, your standards, your expectations, they aren't optional. They are the guardrails protecting your identity. You have the right to walk away, to rebuild, and to choose a relationship that strengthens rather than diminishes you. You were not created to be worn down. You were created to lead. If this message reached you in a place you've been avoiding, make sure you subscribe. There are truths here you need to hear, and Hidden Waters will continue delivering them, unfiltered, honest, and from a perspective that understands the game completely. Like this video if it stirred something inside you. Share it with the men who need it most and tell me in the comments which truth hit you the hardest.